Good morning. Welcome to the Awesemo Odds Show. I am your host, Jordan Frank. We have a very exciting show for you today. We are going deep into the Derby as the Derby weekend is fastly approaching. We have, of course, as always, Ben Rasa. Ben, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm all right. It's like you said, it's Derby Day. I'm excited. It could be expensive. The races start very early today, but obviously one of the best weekends of the year.
And we have a special guest joining us today, Evan Schwartz. How you doing today? I know you've got a background in horse racing that we're going to dig deep into, so we're excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, I'm doing well. This is a little out of my comfort zone, as usually I'm behind the camera and not in front of the camera. But bear with me. I think I'll be all right. But I'm good, ready to go, give some good information on this big weekend in horse racing.
Well, Ben and I set the bar very high here, so
I was about to say you couldn't pick a better spot because you're with us two. Who the ceiling is the roof style. So
that's right. Way to quote the greatest of all time there, Ben.
yeah, right, second greatest, but we're not going down that wormhole.
Oh, that's a tough way to start the show off.
Takes.
Before we get deep into the Derby, I wanted to mention to you guys, obviously you two know that you can bet online horse racing. It is legal in the U.S. I think a lot of people don't really know that. There's some confusion, and there's a few states who restrict it. So certainly make sure you're in a legal state. But, we're going to talk a lot about, who we like in the Derby and in the Oaks and, some wagering ideas and some strategies. And the best way to take advantage of this, is certainly to sign up for an account. We have some links in the show description, and then also we're going to drop it in the chat for everybody to sign up with either TVG or TwinSpires. We have a deposit bonus with both of those sites. So just wanted to mention that off the top before digging into the Derby. The first thing, really we should talk about, of course, is Omaha Beach. The morning line favorite going into the race got scratched a couple days ago. Was going to be about a 4-1 favorite, at least as it was a couple days ago. What are your thoughts, when this happens? I mean, obviously this shakes up the entire field. Ben, why don't we start with you? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, obviously came out of nowhere, changes the whole complexion of the race. It's going to shorten the odds. I do like it. Not that he was going to be a heavy favorite, but it's just more wide open now. It's just about kind of adjusting what really happens to the front, in terms of seat speed, who sets the pace, does one horse do it? And I'm kind of working down from there. So certainly a game changer, no doubt about that.
Yeah, Evan, what are your thoughts? Did this change up your whole strategy going in?
It did, because I thought Omaha Beach was a standout. I thought this field was pretty wide open, but I thought he stood out above the rest. I was leaning towards going with him. From a human perspective, as far as a gambler, I think it's great that he scratched. Obviously, it's really devastating for the connections. I feel really bad for Richard Mandel, who's a class act, a class trainer. He had a lot of humor yesterday still when he was talking about the scratch and how the horse is doing, but overall the horse will be all right. He's supposed to have surgery on his throat to clear it up in the next couple days, and supposed to be returning to racing in the late summer, so that's good news. Rick Porter, the owner, he had a battle through cancer. He made it, and it's really heartbreaking for the connections. Mike Smith, other news actually that we didn't cover is Mike Smith, jockey, actually picked up a mount on the 10 cutting humor, so you can't really feel as bad for him, as he still gets to be in part of the show. But from a gambling perspective, I think it really, really opens up the race and gives you a lot of options, a lot of prices. No one else in this 3-year-old crop has really stood out like Omaha Beach, so I think it opens up the race a lot more now that he's scratched.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, the last 4, 5, 6 years, it seems like we've had pretty prohibitive favorites going into the Derby. And this year, it was wide open, even with Omaha Beach being that presumptive favorite. It still was pretty wide open. And so now, with him being scratched, it just seems like there's a ton of opportunity. And we're going to dig into, some of the favorites now and maybe some value, in the mid-tier, and then some long shots. The interesting thing that I also want to talk about is the weather, of course, which is always a huge part of racing. And the forecast doesn't look great as of right now for tomorrow. Another kind of almost sad note was that Omaha Beach was crushing it on sloppy tracks. The last two races I know that he won was the Arkansas Derby and the Rebel Stakes, and both of those were sloppy tracks. So it seemed even more set up for Omaha Beach. But what are you guys thinking weather-wise? Can you predict the weather? You know, which horse will that affect the most? Ben, what are your thoughts on that?
It certainly changes things. Some of these horses have limited experience just in general. They haven't had a ton of races. So if they haven't seen the slop, it's a wild card. I think it just ups the variance. It's an unknown. Some horses really don't like it. Others thrive. Omaha Beach, we had seen, clearly liked it. I think it changes a couple things. Obviously, this is a big field already. I don't think it's the best thing to have, mud kicked in your face for a while if you're starting from the back, obviously. So, we'll see. It's muddy there today. We'll see how if people can close, if the rail is more pertinent. But it's certainly another element that, again, we certainly have to consider.
I think kind of the same lines as it really just opens things up and makes things a little more of a question mark. I think 100% it's going to rain. They pretty much, it's already a mess there today. It's supposed to be even worse tomorrow. I think if you're not handicapping as if it's going to be a wet or sloppy track, you're silly. It's almost certain that that's going to be the case. But like, there's a lot of questions marks when it comes to sloppy tracks. A lot of these horses have had wet off sloppy tracks before. That's kind of what I look for when I'm doing my handicapping. Do they have experience in this? How is their experience kind of come into it? It leaves things for sure more open and more uncertain, like you said, because a lot of these horses just don't have a ton of experience. When they're 3-year-olds, they don't necessarily race a ton. And we have some form to go off of, but there's also I liked closers in the race, and I'm a little more weary because, like Ben just said, dirt in your face for a mile and a quarter. Well, hopefully, like a mile and then the quarter you go on by. But it can be devastating or just not good for horses, and they won't have the same kick that they normally do in these circumstances.
Yeah, and certainly that will get priced in, to the odds of the horses, just the conditions and how people are perceiving, certain horses and their abilities in the slop. I'm looking at the odds, and I want to kind of go through just briefly. I think we have a lot of people who are either coming into horse racing, pretty fresh, or know a little bit, but maybe need a little bit of a refresher. So we're looking at the odds today. It's a 20 horse field, which is one of the bigger fields you're going to see.
19 now, actually.
19. We had a scratch this morning, you mentioned. So when you look at the odds, those aren't the odds necessarily that you're going to get when the race goes off. And this kind of plays into the theory behind parimutuel betting, and where you're not necessarily betting against the house. It's really a pool of funds that everybody is betting into. Evan wrote a great article, which is on our site, breaking down, just the general basics of horse betting and how that works. Evan, you want to talk just for a minute about just kind of how parimutuel betting works and how these odds aren't quite reflective of what you're going to get tomorrow?
Sure. So let me take it from the standpoint of what most people are used to, of going to a bookie or going to a site saying these are your set numbers. So in most sports, you're betting one of two scenarios, and the house is taking, usually if they're doing a good line, 10%, and they kind of set it as this is what you're getting. Horse racing is based on parimutuel, meaning it's with your peers. So your betting and your pools are not locked in until the race goes off, until that pool is closed. So therefore, like, the odds that you're seeing are made by a morning line maker, and he's predicting what the public is going to do. So for instance, let's take number 1, War of Will. He's 20-1 on the morning line, but if a lot of people start betting him and really like War of Will, his odds will go down. It's not necessarily the 20-1. It's going to be what the total pool is and the percentage of the money he is getting at the total pool. Sure, the track and the people that are putting on this event take their percentage out just like a bookie would, so they can actually make a profit and be able to put on these sports. But in a parimutuel pool, it's based on the wagers that are made by the public, which is why horse racing, in my opinion, is one of the best sports to bet on, because honestly, the public can be stupid. You're not going against the house, which has all these analytics and all these data driven points to make these lines and set these numbers that are going to be pretty much on the mark or close to the mark every time. You're betting here against the public, and you can have a strong opinion that's not the same as the public and get paid handsomely for it.
That's a great breakdown, Ben. So let's talk about just kind of the basic, there's exotic bets you could make, but kind of the basic approach, is bet play, win, play, show. I guess kind of what's your experience on betting just kind of the simple bets versus getting into exotics? And we don't need to get into all of the different forms right now, but just kind of want to get your thoughts, generally on that.
So yeah, obviously win, play, show. Win bet is you got to win the race. Play second, show third. You're going to get different payouts. Obviously, it's a lot easier to come in the top three than win the race. So it's just like DFS in the standpoint of you have bets. If you bet a trifecta, you need first, second, and third. That's going to be a small dollar amount depending on the horses. Obviously, if you hit it, it could be a jackpot like reward. So we have some stuff on the site. If you're unfamiliar with it, you kind of want to just explore what you want to do. If you're going to throw a couple bucks on something, maybe you make an exotic bet where you try to pick the top 3 or 4 and you're looking for like a lotto style payout. If you're looking for a return, you're probably better off trying to maybe just pick the winner. That's hard enough, and make a nice return on your bet.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I wanted to mention real quickly that Evan, talked about is, the concept behind pari-mutuel betting, which you explained, is that, you're really betting against other people. And this is just the number one reason that, our viewers, basically anybody who has a little bit of an analytical edge to that can make some money on the Derby, because you have all of this money that comes into the Derby that normally isn't in horse racing. It's kind of like the Super Bowl in that sense, where you get a ton of casual bettors. Everybody's going to a party, wants to put a few dollars on it, and that directly affects the odds. Unlike, as Evan was saying, in the Super Bowl, the bookie's going to move the line slightly, but here these numbers will fluctuate, pretty dramatically, and you can find some value, and that's where I really want to dig in here and start looking at the actual horses in the Derby tomorrow. So why don't we start? There's a tier certainly of favorites. Sorry, Bob Baffert has the top 3 horses, which seems insane at this point. But why don't we break down, just kind of the crop of favorites, and if you guys see any reason to fade any of the top favorites, how you're going to put them in your cards. And Ben, why don't we start with you in that?
So yeah, I mean, like I said, this is a different year. There's not a clear favorite, but we've got kind of improbable, game winner, roadster. They're all kind of hovering 5-6 to 1-ish, and it's hard. I mean, there's a reason that the odds are what they are. These are horses that when you look at them, they've won some big races. They're trending upwards. It makes sense. So it's correlated. If you take all them, and your payout's going to be a lot less. If you make a stand, you're fading some of the top end horses. For me, I'll just get right to it. I like improbable. Second to Omaha Beach, who is not here, just trending upward. Obviously, mentioned Baffert. Worry a little bit about the distance, but at the same time, I think he'll be where he needs to be, not too far off the pace. We'll get to. I'm not trying to jump around too much. The horse I really want to talk about is Maximum Security. I got to ask Evan about this horse because I'm as confused as ever. But game winner. I think he may go off the favorite, and obviously Roadster ran the big race, but that's where I'm at. I like improbable of the short prices right now. I know he did not win the Arkansas Derby, but I was impressed running against Omaha Beach.
So to take the same question, of the Baffert 3, I'm gonna go with the chalk. I like game winner the best of the 3. He's won at Churchill. He won. I think he can get the distance. He won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year at Churchill. He's been improving since he had a minor setback last year at the end of the year, or maybe the beginning of this year. Improbable, I'm worried about the distance, to be honest. Roadster, I really don't know what to make of him. It's funny you mentioned the Maximum Security. I really wanted to talk about him, and specifically of how the horses that are going to take money, he's one that I'm going to ignore. I really just think that Florida Derby performance was what they call a conveyor belt race. He was from start to finish at the front, the second place finisher, start to finish in second. I mean, it really, when I watched that race, I just really wasn't as impressed as some of the other prep races that I saw. I mean, I could be dead wrong, obviously, but as far as the horses that are going to be taking money, I'm probably going to be avoiding Maximum Security. And the Baffert 3 are really, really hard to separate. But I prefer Game Winner of the three of them. They're for sure threats to be made. With that said, I think it's a wide open derby. I'm not going to go with one of the shorter prices there. I just don't see it being a value play for me. Do note, though, that Bob Baffert with 3 in this race is looking to tie the all-time record for wins in the Kentucky Derby with 6. He has 5 currently, winning in 97, 98, 2002, 2015, and 2018. If he wins, he'll tie Ben Jones, who also has 6 wins in the Derby.
It seems like there is this growing sentiment, I've been hearing it too, kind of against Maximum Security. I mean, is there an argument to be made that you're probably going to get a better price than what it is now? I mean, I'm seeing that he's 10-1 right now. Again, I guess if you guys think that he has no chance, then you're just kind of throwing money away. But what do you think of him getting in the winner's circle?
I mean, I honestly, I'm more just the unknown on this horse. I think there is a chance, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, that we're going to find out that this horse is incredible, because he really hasn't been tested at all. Now, I'm with Evan. If I had to choose what happens, I think he got literally the dream trip in Florida, and if nobody goes with him here, I still worry about the distance, but that's what he needs. However, it is, I mean, we don't know. I don't think there's anyone who can say that Maximum Security, because he has not been tested, and maybe the horse is just something special. We'll find out, because I would be absolutely stunned if he doesn't have to earn it here. And if he breaks clean, I would just be absolutely floored. So I'm more likely than not to not include him as well. But he is one. I think he's a pretty polarizing horse when you really look at him.
So let me say, I don't think he has no chance. I won't say that. It's just not where my money's going. I agree with Ben that there's just a lot of uncertainty about this horse. I mean, he's undefeated. I think that's why he's going to get a lot of attention. He's 4 for 4. The one really thing that kind of shows what's going on is Jason Service, the trainer, took a chance and put him in a maiden claiming race. That was his first start. I mean, for people that don't know what that is you can put a horse into a race where he can be bought and purchased because of the race. So basically, if a trainer's putting a horse in a maiden claiming race, it's possible that that's not their horse anymore at the end of the race.
I should have bought him.
Yeah, right. You could have.
Yeah, we should have.
16 grand. You could have a Derby horse right
Yep.
now. So
that's not bad.
He got lucky. No one claimed him. He went off that maiden win and kind of had 2 nice allowance wins, put up some really good numbers as far as buyer speed figures in the last 2 races. And I think that's where the attention is going to be. He's 4 for 4. I mean, you can't argue the numbers there because they're on the paper. For me, it's just, I agree with Ben. It's still a question mark. I think he got things really easy in the Florida Derby. Even in the 2 allowance races, he it stuff pretty easy. And it's just going on the lead in the Derby for that long and beating 19 or 18 other horses. It just needing the lead. It scares me for him.
Yeah, another thing I wanted to ask you guys and get your expertise on is, obviously with Omaha Beach being scratched and now with Heiko also being scratched, the post positions change. The horses move down, I guess, 2 slots if they were below those 2 horses. So you have Game Winner and Roadster who are coming out of, I think now 14 and 15. And I think those are positions that often kind of get tangled and can get pretty bumpy. Do you see that as an impediment for either Game Winner or Roadster? I mean, they got to come out pretty clean from that position. Ben, what do you think about that?
I mean, it's certainly not ideal. I'll say that I think it's more important if you're a horse that you need to get the lead. And I don't think that either of them will be too concerned if they're just laying in the middle of the pack. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you don't want to have a bad break. There's no doubt about that. But I think it's more of an issue for a horse where their only chance is to get to the front. And if they don't, or they get into a speed duel, you can just forget it. And that, just to finish the point on Maximum Security, if there's another horse that decides that they also want to set the pace, then I think he has no chance. I think his only chance is to just get out and nobody goes with him and he just goes wire to wire. And I just really don't see that happening.
Yeah, it's the Derby. Always horses are going to go after it, and I don't think he's going to get an easy lead. I agree with you completely. To go back on the post position thing, I think it really helps War of Will, to be honest. I really kind of liked him going into the Derby. Then I saw the draw of him being in the one hole. I really don't like the one hole because you just don't have a lot of room. You can get bumped inside. And with the scratch of high kill yesterday, it moves him out. So what they're doing is he's going to be actually breaking from the second gate and not the first gate. So you have a little more room between the rail and the post position that he's breaking from. So, I mean, I'll get into Price Horse on War of Will a little later. He's not going to be my top selection, but I am probably going to use him as someone to go under now, just because I think that the break is very important in the Derby, and the one hole is just so detrimental that this kind of really works out well for him. As far as the Baffert pair that you mentioned, I agree with Ben. They're not really speed horses. They don't need to. They can kind of sit back. Like they'll if they don't break well, it's the Derby. It's going to be hard to come over that. But I think they're going to sit off the pace anyway. That it's not detrimental for them or helpful or hurtful by the changes. I think one of the biggest winners of the situation of the scratches in the repost position is War of Will having more room on the inside.
Gotcha. So then we talked about a few, you both mentioned a few kind of the middle tier, mid shots type horses. Are there any other ones that are kind of catching your eye, either to bet, win, play, show, or to put like in a trifecta pool kind of thing?
So for me, obviously, if you're betting those things, you kind of want to visualize how the race comes out, and you're going to take some horses that maybe you'd be kind of stunned if they win, but you think might be there. For me, the horses win, win, win. Should be sitting, I would say, off the pace. Gonna need, again, most of these horses, there's a reason they're not towards the top in terms of the odds. I think he needs some help in terms of good fractions up top, and if he can close, maybe not get blocked. I wouldn't be shocked to see him grab a piece. He's raced well. He's only got, like a lot of these horses, not a ton of data, second in the bluegrass. But I think you could get a pretty good price on him. I doubt he takes too much money as we get closer to tomorrow.
So there's been a horse that has been the buzz of training for horsemen, for horse players, for everyone lately in the last couple weeks, and that's By My Standards. He's the number 3. He's 20-1. Pretty much horsemen and analysts alike have been talking about how great this horse has been training. His 2 works back, like everyone that was at the track and saw it was like, wow, who is that? He's a horse that really caught my eye on paper before I heard all this. He's not my top selection, but I do think he's a closer that can factor into the mix, maybe for exacta or trifecta plays, or maybe if you want to take a shot at a horse that's 20-1 that maybe has a shot and has been training well. I mean, 20-1, not going to complain there, and you might get that or maybe even a little higher. The fact of the matter is that buzz horses like this that are training well, there is a precedent of them winning or doing well in the Derby. Which comes to mind for me is 2011 with Animal Kingdom, and 2012 I'll Have Another. Both of those horses were just buzz horses the 2 weeks leading up to the Derby of how great they're working, how great they're training, and both of them won. And listen, it's not just like regular sports. I mean, who knows? Steph Curry might not have the best practice leading up to the game on Saturday, but he might roll on Saturday. Or there's a difference between the morning and when the lights are on. And I do think that By My Standards is worth a look based on what he's been doing in the morning, and hopefully that can translate to the afternoon.
Evan, have you heard anything about Code of Honor? I know that's a horse that's done well in the slop before, and I've been hearing a little bit of buzz about Code of Honor. You hear anything about him?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit. I think part of it is because of the connections. Johnny Velasquez is a great rider. He's really respected in the game. Code of Honor's been working really well for Shug. I mean, I've heard the buzz of him as well. Personally, that Florida Derby, I just don't really respect the Florida Derby too much. And he didn't run great in that. He did have an excuse. He was bumped. Fountain of Youth, he looked pretty good. I can't really complain. His numbers are there. I mean, he's a legitimate shot, and as you can make a case for a lot of these horses, and that what makes Derby so tough. Personally, I'm probably going to pass on Code of Honor, but if you wanted to tell me a case for him, I'm not going to argue with you. It's there. It's on the paper. He's working well. He's training well. But that's the thing about Derby time is if you're getting quotes from trainers, from jockeys, they're all saying the same thing. No one's going to say, hey, my horse looks like crap this week. I'm not going to win the race. they're all bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, saying, "Oh, my horse is training great. He's going to do great in the Derby. We're really excited." Like, you're just not going to get the, "Oh, he looks like crap. Oh, he feels like crap." But yeah, I do agree that he has been a little bit of one of those buzz horses. I think that by my standards has definitely got more of that attention. But I have heard a lot of the same kind of thing in the horse racing industry, saying that Code of Honor is looking like one of those horses that's kind of the buzz horse, as people would say.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Before we, I guess, dive into maybe a few long shots, and then I want to really drill down into just kind of a betting strategy with some of the horses we've talked about. We did a promotion on our Twitter handle where we asked our followers to pick if they had their own horse in the Derby, what would be the name of their horse? And we had a bunch of entries, and we're going to pick one now, and the winner is going to get a free month on awesemo.com site with all the premium access to projections, ownership, everything you would want on awesemo.com. So Ben and I are each going to pick our favorite, and then we're going to have Evan be the tiebreaker. I think that's the best way to do it.
That's pressure. I have to pick the winner.
There's a lot of pressure on you. That's, we knew you could handle this. That's why we brought you.
Sure.
Ben, have you taken a look at this list of names? Anybody jumping out to you?
I have, so I'm looking at it right now. I'm trying to think of who I want to choose. I'm gonna go. I guess I don't want to say off the board, but the horse that caught my eye. I do like this name, Chalkatariat. So I'm gonna nominate that for me. I think that's a good one.
That is a good one. I guess I should ask, what would your horse be named? We should throw that in there too, right?
Oh, well, mine. I mean, obviously, mine would be easy. It would be Jazz Raz. No doubt about that. But we'll see. One day, I keep saying that's on my list of things to do, but as people who saw my golfers perform this morning, we're gonna have to wait on buying my horse for a little while. But
Evan, before I pick here, what would your horse be named?
Oh man, so this was always a discussion in the newsroom. We talk all the time. If you could buy a horse, what you would name him. And so, to give a tribute to my old HRTV crew, it's syrup baked in a pancake. So I will tell you why. You can't use all the letters because
too long.
You only have 17 characters. But we worked it out that you can abbreviate it, that it's syrup and baked in pancake, because we always had these early morning shows when we were doing the Breeders' Cup or the Derby or whatever, and our big go-to was McGriddles. So as a tribute to the McGriddles and McDonald's breakfast, we decided we wanted the name Syrup Baked in a Pancake, and that would be my horse name. No rhyme or reason, not that creative, but it was funny, and that's a shout out to my old HRTV crew.
Nice, I like it. I like it. I think mine, I had a couple ideas, but I would probably go Enrico Palazzo. I don't know if you guys know that reference, but that would be my probably horse name.
Okay. I respect that.
Enrico Palazzo. I think I'm going to choose from our list here, Hoof-Hearted. I like that one. Makes me think of a couple different references for Hoof-Hearted.
Okay, so I'm between Hoof-Hearted and Chalkatariat.
Yep.
I think I go Chalkatariat. That's good. That's solid. That's
I like that.
Funny. It's a good combination of betting the chalk and Secretariat. It's solid. I like it. We'll go there.
It checks all the boxes, so we'll make sure to hit up. I think it's Wake Up Hustle is the Twitter handle, so we'll hit you up and get your info and make sure you're signed up. All right, so going back now, I guess I should ask if there's any real long shots that have stuck out to you in any way, and then from there, I think that's a good kind of balance to talk about really the strategies in betting this. We've talked about some basic strategies, some basic horses that we like as the favorites, but then really kind of digging in a little bit as to if you have a philosophy with combining different exotics, betting trifectas or exactas, what kind of your general strategy is to put in all favorites, throw in a long shot. So why don't we just start with, are there any long shots that, have caught your eye at all? Why don't we start with you, Evan, on that one?
So I've already kind of hit on both of mine there. Both price horses I'm looking at are the 3 by my standards, which I mentioned has really just been training well.
Yeah.
He comes off an upset win in the Louisiana Derby. He's been training really well. I like the connections. I think you can't really go wrong there. Calhoun is his first starter in the Derby. So that's something to kind of look at. That's interesting. Um, I went kind of into detail there. It's more the training angle, and that
Yeah.
off a win. War of Will, who was actually also in that Louisiana Derby and kind of actually was terrible. I mean, sometimes horses it just doesn't click, or they're not interested that day, and you can throw out the race and look back at the back form. With War of Will, I saw three pretty impressive races prior to the Louisiana Derby, and he kind of was just never interested in the Louisiana Derby, and I want to give him another shot. I was really concerned about the post position. I like now that he's breaking from the 2 instead of the 1, so that gives him a help. I'm not saying he's going to win the race, and I really don't think he's going to win the race, but I do think he's a good price horse to include in some of the exacta trifecta type plays. He'll be close to the lead. That might be a problem for him, but I do. Those are the two that kind of caught my eye. Another one, Plus K Parfait. Um, he won one of the weakest prep races, in my opinion, actually, the UAE Derby. And for some reason, I want to hate this horse. I want to not use it. Every time I look at the race and look at him on paper, I'm intrigued. I think that's one that I still don't know what to do with, but I'm questioning putting him as a price play in some of my exacta trifecta superfecta plays.
That was an impressive pronunciation, though, of the French name.
Oh, thank you. Merci beaucoup. um, uh, the one real question mark for me, the 50-1 15 Master Fencer. A lot of people just don't know what to make of this horse, including myself. He's 50-1. He's interesting. He comes from Japan. Very big question mark. I don't know what to do there. So those are kind of the four that I'm kind of looking at deciding what to do with. By my standards, War Will I'll for sure use. Plus K Parfait and Master Fencer, I'm kind of still making my final opinions on. I think I'm going to throw Master Fencer out and maybe throw Plus K Parfait on my trifecta and superfecta wagering.
How about you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm more apt to try to attack. If I'm looking to make, say, a bigger hit, that mid range rather than I feel like some people say, oh, this horse is 90-1. This is going to be great. It's a real reach. Anything can happen, but it can be brutal. There is one horse that we haven't mentioned that, again, you're if a lot of things break right, Country House. Breaking from the ninth, he's one of the last guys in the gate. Another closer, hasn't, he's 1 for 6 in terms of wins. Nothing really impressive. Ran in some stakes races, was up there, hit the board, but not really a threat. I'm sure he'll be gaining. I mean, he better be gaining because he's going to be closing. You're going to need some real extreme fractions and a clear trip for him to grab a piece of the board, but that's what you have to ask for. Obviously, if these horses would have won some of these stakes races, they would be the favorites. I mean, that's really how it goes gearing up. So I think that's a horse that I may consider in maybe some of my exotics.
Yeah, I like that horse too. I didn't mention him, but I do think that Country House can pick up part of the pieces. He's always been in the top 4 throughout his career.
Yeah,
you will see that with a lot of these horses. But so when you're looking for kind of price horses or horses to pick up the pieces and hit the board, a horse that's been consistent like this is someone perfect for that example. They always try, they always fight. I gave you I gave you a horse, War of Will, and last start he finished 9th, beaten 12 lengths. He wasn't anywhere in the picture. While the horse you just suggested, Country House, he's always been there, and that's kind of something you might want to attack when you're looking for horses to pick up part of the pieces. Is, do they always fight? Do they always give a good effort? Can they hit the board all the time? And I think that's a good reason to maybe include Country House there.
What do you guys think about Long Range Toddy? I know it's going off at about 30-1 right now, and I think more of a fast track kind of horse, but I've been hearing a little bit of buzz about that horse as well.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas Derby wasn't good for him. But as Evan said, sometimes, horses doesn't have it. I don't think the slop helps him.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to make my card, but, I have seen his name here and there. To tell you the truth, I don't know a ton about the horse. Just didn't see a ton that I liked.
Same here. Not a ton I liked here. I really respect the trainer, Steve Asmussen, but to give you a stat on him, he has the most starts for a trainer without a win. He has 19 starters in the Kentucky Derby and has never won. I mean, given it's about the horse, that's an extra stat for him. But any good horse can change a trainer's stat line. But I really just don't see it for long range Toddy. Um, I don't like his last start in the Arkansas Derby. The Rebel, he kind of freaked and beat a good Improbable, but I don't know that I really like Improbable, to be honest. I don't know that he can get the distance. Of the three Bafferts, I think I kind of gear away towards Improbable and more towards Game Winner and Roadster. And just for that reason, Long Range Toddy's best win and best career performance was against a horse that maybe I'm not respecting as much as the other ones. So that's one of the main reasons I'm kind of staying away as far as long range toddy goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the stats that I saw and is a trend, and trends are worth whatever you think they're worth. But over the last 15 years, now I'm looking more like trifecta and superfectas. Uh, the top three favorites have not come in, or only came in once in the last 15 years. So that being said, it seems like you need to have probably two favorites and maybe one middle tiered horse to try and hit on some trifectas, or maybe larger. Do you guys have general strategies then going into kind of these bigger exotic plays? Are you doing mostly favorites? Are you sprinkling in a couple of the more mid tier horses?
I think you have to sprinkle. It's more what I try to do is try to envision scenarios similar to what we talk about in correlation with DraftKings. It's like, okay, if maximum security sets the pace and he goes out clean, maybe he gets caught by this horse, or if there's a speed duel, maybe these closers come up together, and try to imagine, kind of build a story. And then, you're talking about massive odds. Most likely your story is going to fall apart because that's what happens. But that's really how I try to do it. And I think, when you're talking about a horse coming third or fourth, a lot of things can happen. You get how you're closing. Some of these horses are out of gas. So you definitely want to just look beyond the heavy favorites.
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to me for betting strategy and doing exactas and trifectas, I usually like to figure out who I think's going to win and key in on that horse. So what I'll do is I'll play a big combination of other horses behind him for second or third if I'm playing a trifecta, and then back myself up where I also key the horse I think's going to win for second or third. So if I if I'm right on my opinion that the best horse is going to either win, take second, or take third, you're going to do nicely in the exacta and trifecta wagering because, like you said, it's just yeah, we've had the favorite win the last 6 years in the Derby, but the exacta every year has come back pretty strong, with the exception of maybe one or two of those years because you're having 30 to 1, 40 to 1, 50 to 1 shots get second or third, and really inflating those exacta and trifecta payouts. And if you actually look at the article that I wrote on how to bet the Derby, I go into a little more detail about how exacta, trifecta, superfecta, and even super high five wagering can be big, if not life changing scores in the Kentucky Derby, just because there's so much money in these pools. There's so many horses and so many options that if you're hitting these exactas, trifectas, and if you're lucky enough to get a super high five, I mean, you're going to bring home a pretty massive score.
Yeah, I'm glad you referenced that guide to horse betting again, because that was a really great resource that's on our site now. And Ben has his preview for the race up, and then Evan, you also did. I want to hit on just real quickly here. I don't want to go into great detail, but
Sure.
with the Oaks race today, you wrote an article on our site about the Oaks Derby double. Do you want to talk about that real quickly and kind of the value that you basically have discovered there in betting that double?
Sure. So, for those that don't know, a double is when you bet. Usually, it's two consecutive races on a race card, but on big days and big weekends, tracks like to do special wagers to kind of help piece together a whole weekend. So, one of the big doubles that they offer is the Oaks and Derby double. That's when you bet on two races, one being the Kentucky Oaks, one being the Kentucky Derby, and you're trying to pick the winner in both. And basically, what I have found that in the last 10 years, if you were to bet on the Oaks winner, a $2 win bet on the Oaks winner, and then take that and parlay whatever you won into the Derby winner, you are not making as much money as if you're betting the double. Because basically, this double pool has a lot of dead money in it. There's a lot of people betting into the pool, and you're going to get a plus scenario in that circumstance. So if you were really strong opinion on the Oaks and a really strong opinion on the Derby, you want to bet both races anyway. Why not put it all on one ticket? For instance, in 2013, Princess of Silmar and Orb was a favorite in the Kentucky Derby. And if you bet Princess of Silmar and then bet a $2, if you bet two to win on Princess of Silmar and then took that 38.80 that you won on Princess of Silmar, put it on Orb, you would have won 373 more dollars by betting the double instead of betting a straight parlay. So, and that's the extreme of it. There are years that it has been a loss to do that, but the losses were $2.34, $2.60, while some of the gains are in the hundreds to 200s to 300s. I mean, there's just a lot to gain there. The reason you're going to lose value is when someone just really, really hammers something, like just has a really strong opinion. The 2014 year was one of the two losing scenarios though, and there and it was when two favorites won. And so when it's two favorites, people might crush it and have a really strong opinion that they're doing straight doubles on Untapable, the California Chrome. But most years that bet has been a way to make more money than if you were betting it just in a parlay format.
Yeah, I love that analysis, and I know you tied a lot to Bellafina in your analysis for who is the big favorite at the Oaks today. Ben, have you looked at the Oaks at all? I know that's one of the races going off today. Have you had a chance to look at it?
I have. Yeah, so this is a good day, for people watching the show. I'll be in Slack. I'm betting these races today. Bellafina is serious business. There's no doubt about it. The one knock, and I'm going to pass this right to Evan. I've looked at her. She looks dominant. Her one race at Churchill was by far her worst race. I don't worry about that too much. God, this horse is good. One of my girl last year. Just it seems like that kind of scenario. Do you think anyone can kind of upset this horse?
So it's horse racing, first off. So anytime there's a race, someone can upset them. Especially with the fillies. 3-year-old fillies tend to be a little quirkier. They're not necessarily as consistent sometimes, and when it goes wrong, it tends to go wrong fast. But I will say that Bellafina seemed to have figured it out this year, and with horses that figure it out, I don't think she's going to take a back step. I think she's a standout. If I were trying to use another horse to beat her, the one for me that stands out would be Champagne Anyone. Also a horse that just really figured it out last out in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. But for me, I think Bellafina is a standout. I don't want to get too creative here. I do have some price plays that can maybe get a piece of it or like exact a trifecta, but I don't think they're going to win. I like the one Out for a Spin. Again, kind of figured it out this year. Had a couple nice performances. I really liked the Ashland win. It was gutty. I thought she fought really hard. And then Lady Apple.
Yeah, that's my horse. So that's the horse that I like.
Yeah, so I mean that horse I can see numbers wise on all the forums that I've seen makes sense. The win in the fantasy was impressive. I think Asmussen for some reason trains fillies really, really well. The 3-year-old fillies, he had a couple standouts. One that I can really think of is obviously Rachel Alexandra in 2009, who absolutely romped in the Kentucky Oaks. Probably would have won the Derby if she went into the Derby, because she ended up winning a Triple Crown race right next in the Preakness. I want to beat Bellafina. I really do, because I really don't like taking the chalk, and I just don't see it. I really don't. I think she's a standout. I think she's going to win. But if you do want to kind of go searching, I would say Champagne Anyone, Out for a Spin, or Lady Apple. I think Lady Apple's the one to really kind of. It's one of those buzz horses that people are pointing towards, and clearly, Ben, if that's who you like, I guess.
I'm with you. 3 straight seems to have figured out I'm a Steve Asmussen guy. Saw her in Saratoga last year. Did not race well against Catherine the Great, but I think that she can, like you said, grab a piece. I like many people, I'll probably have Bellafina on top of a horse like that. That'll still be a decent exacta. She's not taking a ton of money. I think people may look to Jaywalk, who beat Bellafina. I'm not there personally. I don't really see it, so I'll probably stick with that. But I think we're pretty much on the same page. Of course, like you said, can she get taken down? Of course, I would be pretty surprised. She really does seem like she's firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, and just to hit on Jaywalk, I mean, people are going to see that she beat her at Churchill, but I just don't think Bellafina had it figured out at that point. And Bellafina has completely reversed her trend by really, really training well, winning races, performing well. While Jaywalk's gone the absolute opposite direction.
Absolutely.
Since that Breeders' Cup win has not put it together. And with these fillies, I mean, I just think I'm looking for consistency in a horse that has figured it out, not one that's still kind of going back and forth. And Jaywalk seems to be going in the opposite direction. But I do agree with you that I think that horse will take a lot of money, have a lot of attention because, oh, she beat her on paper already once. Why can't she do it again? Personally, I don't see it here.
Awesome. And like we said, I mean, that goes off at what, like 6:30 Eastern today? Is that the post time for
6:12 Eastern? Usually they give you about 8 to 10 minutes after post time. I would say the race is going to go off somewhere around 6:22 Eastern time. But with these races, I'd say I suggest to get your wagers in early because sites tend to either get blogged up or freeze, or you don't know when it's going to go off. So to be safe, I would say play it as if it's going to go off at 6:12, but I think you have about an extra 10 minutes past that.
Yeah, that's a good little tip. There's going to be a ton of action coming in today and tomorrow on all of these sites. I guess then just going back to the Derby to button it up here. I know you guys all have kind of a mix on your cards of what you're betting, but if you had to pick, the order, what are you thinking as of today? I mean, what can we hold you to as top three finishers?
For me, so I like Improbable. I've said that on the. For me, I think the way Evan mentioned this, you have the 3 Baffert horse. Roadster is third for me. I think Game Winner, serious business. I think they both grab a piece. I'm gonna throw Win in there, kind of as my maybe a little against the grain, but I think Improbable wins the race. That's what I hope happens. Put Win in there, and then yeah, Game Winners. Hard to bet against them not hitting the board.
So it's funny, we've gone 50 minutes here, and I don't think I have mentioned my top pick once yet.
Oh wow!
So let me get into my top pick.
Tacitus?
It's Tacitus.
That's what I thought.
So Tacitus, I think overall I'm a little concerned about the weather with him, as he's kind of a little bit of a question mark in that area. But it does. He seems like the right one. The Wood Memorial, honestly, where he came out was just so impressive to me. He was bumped, had trouble in the first turn, closed like an absolute freight train. Like he's been really impressive. And I actually want to go back on my wet track saying he has won on a wet track before in his maiden at Aqueduct. So I think overall that's where I'm standing. The Wood Memorial just hasn't really been an impressive prep race in the past. That doesn't mean it couldn't be this year. So that's my one kind of hesitation towards making him my all out, like this is the top pick, this is who you have to bet. But he's the one that I'm looking towards the win bets right now. Get value at 10-1. They actually have a funny thing. Bet a gray on a rainy day is a term used often on horse racing. He's a gray horse. It's going to be raining. That's not why I'm using him, but sure, why not for those that want to get cute or use terminology. You bet a gray on a winning day, Tacitus, sure. I think he's put it together. He's won 3 straight after losing. You have good rider in Jose Ortiz. Bill Mott is kind of that Hall of Fame trainer that kind of has that story that's looking to get that Derby win. And I think it's a really good storyline. I think he's got value. He's been just as impressive as some of these other horses that are going to get you less value. Other horses I'm probably going to use on top. I like I said, already mentioned that Game Winner I think is the standout of the Baffert horses for me. He's the one I'll probably use on top there. So those are the 2 key horses I think I'm going to be using on top. Price horses I already mentioned by my standards. War of Will, I'm still kind of going back and forth on whether I'll use him in 2nd, 3rd, 4th place positions. The 1 hole still does really concern me, and obviously the Louisiana Derby is concerning, but like I said, I think I'm going to throw that out. Maximum Security, I mentioned I'm just going to pass and hope that I don't get burned there. And it's such a crapshoot when there's 19 horses that really I just don't like going towards low priced horses. So Tacitus 10-1, I think you're gonna get a good price. I think he's got all the numbers and all the figures that a lot of the other contenders do, but that's where I go.
Yeah, it is amazing. We went the whole time already without mentioning Tacitus. For what it's worth, I think I'm certainly going to have a variety and a mix with my different, you know, trifectas and exactas, but I really want to put Code of Honor in my trifectas. So I'm just trying to determine, you know, which of the either one or two favorites I'm going to throw with Code of Honor. So probably Game Winner and Improbable is at least what I'm looking at right now, but obviously always subject to change. But that's kind of where I'm thinking. Obviously, it's just an exciting time. We all love the Derby, best 2 minutes, most exciting 2 minutes, and the fastest 2 minutes in sports. Any final thoughts, guys, on the race tomorrow? I do want to hit NBA playoffs here real quick, so don't go anywhere. But final thoughts on the Derby, Ben?
No, I mean, I think the weather is not going to be an unknown because, as Evan said, it's going to rain, but still kind of keep an eye on it. I do plan, not that I'm going to change everything, but I think it's important to watch the races before this and see what's happening. You know, there are trends that develop, whether it's the rail is favorable, the rail's not, closers are really having trouble. Little things, you know, when you're between two horses, I will use some of that information that we can glean from the earlier races to make some decisions.
Completely agree with Ben there. I mean, you have to watch and see if people are closing on the track that day. If they're not, and people and horses on the lead are winning the whole way through, then you have to look at the speed horses in the Derby. And if they're closing well, you look at some of the closers. You just kind of have to look at how the track's playing that day. We know the weather's going to be bad. You have to plan for that. So it's not really going to change up your handicapping too much because you do know going in that you need to have the wet track or sloppy track form. I don't think I'm going to change my top pick at this point. I've kind of going to stick to my guns on Tacitus. In the past, I've wavered until last minute on Saturdays, so this is a little more pressure for me doing a show the day before and kind of have my opinions a little more locked in. But overall, I think that's the key: is paying attention to the track, paying attention to what's going on. Is there a jockey that's really hot that day or making great rides? Is a trainer's horses doing well in the races before? You can pay attention to stuff like that and help you. But if you've done your homework, you've done your research, you're handicapping correctly, or as far as correct condition wise, you got to stick to your guns. The Derby's hard. There's 19 horses. These big horse racing days are very, very difficult, and that's why they're such great races and great days to bet, because there's a lot of money up for grabs, and there's going to be over $200 million bet on Derby Day and probably over $150 million bet on the Derby alone. So, I mean, that's just money you got to attack, and good luck to everyone doing it. And hopefully we all have big scores because of it. And hopefully this information helped you.
Yeah, great stuff, guys. Great breakdown. So looking forward to it tomorrow, and we'll kind of see where everything shakes out tomorrow and reassess next week. Want to transition here kind of briefly into NBA playoffs. We've been talking about it basically every week. And since we talked last week, there's been, you know, certainly some interesting developments. Why don't we start in the East? The Celtics and the Bucks, they're playing tonight. The Celtics are 2-point favorites at home. The series has been interesting in that it's been two blowouts. The Celtics go in game one and just basically destroy the Bucks. Giannis doesn't have a great game. Game two, kind of the complete reversal happens. Kyrie has a terrible game. Celtics get crushed, but the Celtics do go in. They get one game. They get home court now. The series price, which is what interesting, and we talk about a lot, the Celtics are still plus 158-ish underdogs in the series, even though they won game one and got home court. Ben, let's start with you. Have your thoughts changed at all? I know we both were on the Celtics and really liked what we saw going into the series and seemed like we were validated with game one, but, you know, of course, it can never be that easy, right?
Never could be that easy, but yeah, my thoughts, no, they haven't changed at all. I loved what I saw. Game two, that's just one of those situations. And I'm not saying it can't be done, but, you know, Milwaukee's as desperate comes. They need the game. The Celtics, they've done, like you asked the Celtics before the series, they go to Boston 1-1. They're obviously taking it. So they've done their job. I think we both have Boston in this series. So I bet that beforehand. I like it. I would really hope that they can really put the pressure on by going back to Milwaukee 3-1. That is the plan. And, these games, I would expect certainly more competitive matches. We saw, like you said, Boston controlled game one, and then the Bucks did respond. But I think they're the better team, and Brad Stevens is squarely the better coach, and that makes it a huge difference in a 7-game series.
I think so too. Evan, what do you? I know you're the horse racing expert, but I know you follow the NBA pretty closely too. So we got to get your thoughts.
So this series is tricky to me because Boston's just been so confusing all year. You just can't figure them out. They one day they look like the best team in the country and best team in the NBA, and another day they look absolutely miserable. And for me, I think I usually tend to go with who has the best player on the court. And the best player on the court is Giannis. I know he didn't look like it in game one. I know that, maybe Al Horford maybe can shut him down again. I don't know. That series is just such a confusing question mark to me. I would lean the other way against from you guys, saying that maybe Milwaukee figured it out after game one and that I would stand with Milwaukee in the series. I know that might not be a popular pick in this room. I don't know that they win tonight. I'm just so perplexed by this series, to be honest. I really just, of the 4 remaining series, this is the one probably that I have the least clue about. And especially a game 3 like tonight, you would think Boston comes out strong at home. They probably win tonight, and then maybe Milwaukee does adjustments and wins game 4. But this series to me is just, it's a head scratcher. I really don't know what to do. I think whoever does win this series, I will say though, is probably going to represent the Eastern Conference. I'm just not on Philly. I don't know. That's just.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. Ben and I a lot seem to end up on the same side. So I always like to have somebody who can bring a contrarian thought. And obviously the Celtics were the big dogs going into the series. The interesting thing that Ben mentioned to me is the coaching advantage, disadvantage. It seemed to me that the Bucks really, even though they crushed the Celtics in game 2, it didn't seem like they made a ton of adjustments to me. I felt like Giannis kind of played the similar style. He's getting walled off from the basket as much as Stevens can possibly, coach to do it. I think he needs to be more of a facilitator, and it didn't seem like he was willing to do that even in game 2, even in a blowout. And it was such a blowout that it's almost hard to gain a lot of information from it because the minutes, everybody doesn't play their full minutes. It was such a blowout. And, maybe you could argue, conversely, game 1, you couldn't take a lot from how the Celtics dismantled them. But I feel like tonight the Celtics are really going to take it to them and should win the game tonight. The line seems too low to me for them only to be a 2-point favorite.
For me, it's just the situation, and obviously, like I said, I'm somewhat biased. I can't believe I'm rooting for a Boston team. That's not what I like to do. But I really came into the series, and it was more just the price dictating what I wanted to do. I was stunned that the Celtics were plus, 2 something, depending on what your book is, to win the series. If they were a slight dog, I'd say, okay, Milwaukee's got home court. I see it. I just really didn't understand that. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, I will say if Milwaukee is to win the series, I don't think it's going to be because of Giannis. I think it's going to be because of Middleton. He needs to play like a true second, a Robin, because Giannis is going to do his thing as much as he can. He's fantastic. We all know that, but he's going to need help from either Bledsoe or Middleton. So if one of them can really step up, similar to what we're going to talk about with the Raptors, Kawhi needs some help desperately.
Yes,
that's the key to me for the Bucks.
Yeah, I think Middleton, I think we talked about last week. To me, Middleton was the key. I don't know, Evan, if you have any last thoughts on that.
Not really. I just kind of stand with, I'm going to go with the best player in the East because I don't think any team is that good, is anything like the teams in the West. And I think it's kind of the LeBron factor in the East, but now it's Giannis's turn. I mean, he can take over a game. He's the best player on the court. He's going to either be the MVP or the runner-up, and I see him being the guy that can get Milwaukee past this round. Maybe, hopefully, realistically, I think he can get them to the finals and maybe even contend a little bit against, let's be honest, probably Golden State.
So I want to talk because we both kind of mentioned it. Personally, I think the most fascinating series is Toronto and Philly. I was advocating pretty strongly for Toronto before the series started. Toronto came out and pretty comfortably won game one, and I was feeling great. And kind of the theme here is shouldn't be too excited too early in a long 7 game series. Since that game one, obviously the script has totally flipped. Game two kind of got out of hand at home. Jimmy Butler, who I'm a Bulls fan and know Jimmy Butler very well. He has these moments where he is incredibly clutch, and I will give him credit. I don't rely on him to do that consistently. I still think in a long series, I still want to be on Toronto. That might be a contrarian take now. They're dogs in the series, which I found interesting. Slight dogs, but they are dogs. They're on the road tomorrow. +1, I believe, is the line for tomorrow's game. Ben, what are you seeing here? I mean, am I crazy to still like Toronto?
I mean, this is kind of what Evan was saying about Celtics Bucks. I don't know what to make of this series. I really have no feel. I was leaning, I guess, to the Raptors. I thought that not that they would win game 3 per se, but they did not look good. Kawhi needs serious help. Lowry needs to wake up, because that's the thing, at least with the Sixers. Jimmy Butler can do it. Obviously, Embiid can do it. Simmons, they at least have a multitude of guys. And right now it seems like Kawhi is doing, I can only imagine what's going to happen when he doesn't shoot 65% in a game, because he's doing everything humanly possible, and it's clearly not enough right now. So I'm probably not going to take a position on the series. Clearly, the Raptors need to get it to game 5, 2-2. It's going to be certainly desperate for them tomorrow.
So I might sound a little bit contradictory here, because the best player on the court is by far Kawhi Leonard. But
didn't you just say
the next 3?
He just doesn't have enough help. Lowry just cannot do it in the playoffs. For some reason, he just does not show up come playoff time. And I hate to say, just because Toronto hasn't proven anything to me, they're not going to win the series. But that's exactly the stance I'm going, is that Philly has so much more talent. They're playing better as a team. They're young, yes, and they still need to prove something as well. But I think they're a young up-and-coming team that still hasn't proven they can't do it in the playoffs, while Toronto consistently just seems to let you down, and specifically Lowry. And it's mind-blowing how a player can play so well in the regular season, and then when the playoff comes, he just can't put it together. Kawhi's unbelievable. He's playing out of his mind, and they're down 2-1. I mean, I just don't see how they can win a series with him continuing to play this well and not win games. I think, like you mentioned, they clearly need to win game 4 to have any shot in the series. And it's just, this is all Philly to me. It really is. I think they can win in 5.
So I said before that the line was +1. It is +1, but it's actually Toronto favored in game 4. So that just speaks to the urgency. And, just looking at that, I'm guessing that the public is going to be on the Sixers as the home small dog. I mean, basically as a pick 'em, which makes me typically like Toronto even more. But I am on an island here, it seems like, and I don't know what it is with Lowry, because you guys are both right that he had a great season, and again, like he has the last 3-4 years, just kind of disappeared. And part of my rationale in really liking Toronto here was that, look, this is a pretty significantly different team than those last few years against LeBron. Siakam has turned into one of the best players, arguably, maybe not one of the best players in the league, but like a top 20, 25 player in the league. You have Marc Gasol, you have Danny Green. Like, they have a lot more talent and experience than they used to. So I guess I'm going to die on this hill, but I'm going to probably pick them game 4, because they have to win that game, essentially. I don't think they're going to come back down 3-1. So love the series, though, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow for sure. So why don't we go out west? I don't find these series as compelling for some reason. Obviously, the Warriors and the Rockets is almost like a pseudo NBA Finals. Both games have been really amazing games and kind of had their own storylines. They're going back to Houston. Houston's down both games, obviously. Evan, why don't we start with you here? What have you seen? Is Golden State going to win this in 5, which a lot of people seem to be predicting?
I think Golden State wins, obviously. I don't think that Houston can get over how good Golden State actually is. It just seems to be fairly obvious that that's going to be the way the series goes. But I do have an interesting stat for this third game. The last, I think it's 10 years, if you've played a team that's down 0-2 going back home in the third game, you play them in the first half. Play the first half line, take Houston. There's so much pressure on them to roll in that first half. I don't know that they're going to win the game, but they got to come out firing. They got to set the tone to have any chance in this game or even the series. They have to fire. They have to kind of control the game early and try and get that big lead at home, get their crowd into it. So that's where I go in game 3 is I think it's really, really relevant to look at that angle. It's one of those angles that for some reason or the other, it works out. And it happens to have a lot more basis than some of the other trends that you kind of go towards in betting. Like it's clear that a team down 0-2 at home is going to come out strong. That's just, it doesn't always work, but I think it's hitting at 60, 70% clip in the last 10 years. And you're getting a pretty solid rate in return. I think in 2016, if you followed that play, I think it went undefeated. I'm pretty sure it went like 8-0 or 9-0 that year. I'm going to try and maybe write up something a little more on that or go into a little more detail maybe on the website. But if you want to look into it, that would be a good move. I think the Warriors are obvious here. I mean, Houston just they have to win both at home, which is possible. But I agree. I see Golden State taking one of those games and wrapping it up in 5 at home.
Yeah, to just chime in here real quick, Ben, before we get your thoughts. So I'm just looking at one book, and obviously you need to line shop, but I'm seeing that the first half line is -1.5 for Houston, but it is pretty heavily juiced at -140. So you know the book is shading people to try and bet the other side when they put that much juice on it.
Yeah, I mean that it obviously makes a ton of sense. Houston, similar to what we just talked about. Houston is coming out. It's all in time. You know, if the Warriors lose game 3, they're going to say, okay, we get another chance to come, get up 3-1. The Rockets have to win. They need to win 4 out of 5, obviously, but I don't see any possible way that they can split at home and then win 2 in Oracle and game 6. That's not going to happen. So they should come out firing. Harden's I assume it's all right. But at the end of the day, I honestly think like most games, it's more about where the Warriors are at mentally. If they want to really step on their throats, it could be curtains, in 5. If they get lackadaisical, maybe this does extend a little. But when push comes to shove, the Warriors are sadly, they're just too good.
They are too good. A crazy stat that I saw is that in both games 1 and 2, which Houston arguably could have won either one of those games, Houston made more threes, had a higher percentage from the field, and attempted and made more free throws in both of the games, and still lost both games. So, what more can they do outside of shooting like 70% from 3, which is obviously conceivable with them. They're going to shoot 45 threes. So it seems like that's their, the high variance way, and that's their style, right? I mean, that's how they try to beat the Warriors is just play as fast as they can, shoot as many threes, and hope for one of those games.
For sure.
The last series in the West is Denver and Portland. We talked a lot about Portland last series. They didn't look great in game 1, but came back and won pretty easily game 2. They are now the favorites in the series. They're a -138, where I'm looking to win the series. Obviously riding kind of a crazy wave of momentum, from the OKC series, now going against Denver. They got to feel almost invincible at this point. The line, so game 3 is tonight. Portland is a 4-point favorite at home. Ben, what are your thoughts on this game and the series in general?
Portland's a team, yeah. I mean, everyone was super impressed, taking down OKC. I didn't think they looked good. Then they responded how I thought they should have. I like them in the series. I'm not sure. It's kind of a game that I think you can glean some once it starts, maybe get a position in live. If Portland happens to start slow, I would maybe look to jump on them at home. But when push comes to shove, Denver's a team that still, they've got the pieces. I'm not sure this is the year for them to make it even to the Western Conference Finals. They're up and coming, but Portland with Lillard, McCollum, I think one way or another, they're going to end up moving on to take on the Warriors.
So I think that Damian Lillard smells blood. I mean, he's an absolute killer. He is a killer. He smells blood in game 2. They took over that game, and I think in theory took over the series because of it. I don't that the Rose Garden in Portland. I think they win both games at home, and then it's going to be really hard for Denver to win 3 straight. Jokic is amazing. I don't want to take anything away from him, but that crowd in Portland, the way Damian Lillard plays at home, the way he can take over a game, I see Portland in the series, but I think they're all playing for bridesmaid status anyway because no one's beating Golden State. That's just
we all agree on that.
no, I know. For this series and gambling options, yes, okay.
For sure.
I go Portland in this game in the series. I think they win both these games at Portland. I basically think the home team wins the next 4 games in that series is what I see, and that's how Portland takes it in Game 6.
So it looks like I'm going to be the only one, I think, taking Denver. I still believe in Denver, at least as we stand today at 9:40 Pacific time in the morning. They just have to take advantage of their size and depth down low. Like, there's no reason they shouldn't be pounding the ball down low against Portland's bigs, who are just a sieve on defense, and they just don't have any depth there. And I just need Jamal Murray to play a little bit better. He had a great game 1. He kind of fell off. He was kind of up and down in the first series, and the games really, were determined a lot on how he played. And so maybe that's just too much pressure on a young player hasn't been in this position before. But at least as of today, I'm going to be still on Denver, to be determined for sure as it goes forward. And like Ben said, live betting is the way to go in a lot of these games. I don't love the line right now. If I can get a better number during the game, I'm going to jump on that for sure.
Yep.
Last thing we have to discuss, since we did talk about it last week, is Game of Thrones. And I understand that Evan does also watch the show. Not sure if you're a book reader. We'll have to talk more about your depth of knowledge, but obviously an insane episode. I guess I should preface this all with a spoiler alert. If anybody hasn't seen last week's Battle of Winterfell episode, they probably should just stop watching now. But all that being said, Evan, I'm not sure if you were aware, you probably are, that you can basically bet on anything that exists. And there are markets relating to Game of Thrones as to who. What I've discovered is there's a lot more bets than I first realized, but kind of the general one is who's going to be there at the end as the ruler. And Ben and I talked about it last week. Do you have any hot takes, any thoughts as to who? I don't know if you've seen the lines at all, but Jon Snow is the favorite.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say, in that scenario, I'm just chalky. I know it's not the play that I like to usually make, and that's why I will not be playing that. But if I were to be diving in on the Game of Thrones, me and my wife like to play a little game at the end of every episode, asking who we think will be on the Iron Throne at the end. I've consistently said Jon Snow, and there's no reason for me to change that now. It's obviously a popular pick, but it's not really a surprising pick. I don't see it going any other way. I think that the show writers and the showrunners want to kind of skirt from that, but it just seems everything pointing towards either him or Cersei. That's just kind of my opinion on it. I don't see anything else happening. I thought, to be honest, last episode they probably could have and should have killed off more of the main characters. That was my one kind of disappointment, other than everyone saying the darkness. I wasn't as much of it was too dark of an episode as far as visually. I thought maybe they could have brightened it up a little better, but I like kind of what the cinematographer was doing of kind of being confused. But yeah, I would say Jon Snow would be the way to go, and that's not anything impressive or anything like that.
How about you, Ben? What do you think of the episode, and has your thoughts changed as to the end game?
Yeah, I didn't mind the episode in terms of the lighting. I saw that, obviously, like everyone else did in the complaint department. No one really who was even remotely considered in terms of the odds died. I don't think anyone thought like Jorah was going to somehow be on the throne. So
what?
And we did say, both of us, that we did not think that the Night King would be.
I was going to say that's not true. The Night King was one that would have died.
He was actually, one of the few where I was just like, I really can't see a scenario where he actually ends up when it's all said and done. Obviously, there's only a couple episodes left, so it'll be telling. Jon Snow, like Evan said, should be the favorite. I mentioned Bronn. I still don't Brand, I don't understand his whole deal, but you're Daenerys, right? Is that who you said last week? I can't even remember.
Yeah, that's what I said last week, and I think I'm still gonna. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with her for now.
Okay. Fair enough.
I like kind of where it seems like it's heading to a showdown with her and Jon Snow. I don't think the two of them are gonna necessarily be there at the end, kind of hand in hand. And the Cersei, I found one interesting wager about kind of going against what Evan was just saying, but basically who will kill Cersei Lannister.
Yeah.
And for sure, one of the bets is she does not die. So if you think she's going to be there at the end, then you should jump on that. I saw 6-1 that she's going to survive. So those are pretty good odds, but I don't know if I want to get too much into that because some people might think it's a spoiler, but I have a pretty strong opinion on who's going to kill Cersei, in my own opinion. And a lot of that is based on the books, and maybe we'll save that for next week, assuming she survives this week.
Sounds good.
But yeah, so I think we should wrap it up. Awesome preview. Love talking about the Derby. NBA, obviously, we'll continue to talk about week after week as these series go on. A lot of amazing things going on. Like we talk about, a lot of people think this is kind of a downtime in the sports betting world, but there's so much going on. And now that we have Triple Crown series here, and obviously baseball, basketball, hockey, Game of Thrones, Jeopardy. We didn't even talk about Jeopardy, but we'll have to see where he is next week. It's an exciting time. Any final words, Evan? We really appreciate you coming on and giving your insights on the Derby and the NBA.
Yeah, no, it was great to join you guys. I hope that all this information is helpful. Tacitus for me. I'm gonna hammer him to win. Hopefully, I'm right. Hopefully, I can hit some exactas and trifectas because of it. And good luck to everyone wagering on the Derby and this weekend and in sports. And hopefully, this information has been helpful.
Yeah, for sure. How about you, Ben? Any last thoughts?
No, fun couple days. If you're in Slack, I'll be in there. Going to be watching these races all day. Minute the show ends, I'll be slow squeezing to see if I hit the races that have gone by. And any questions, you find us on Twitter. We'll be around as always.
Awesome, guys. Well, have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.
Good show, guys.